Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's live as part of Pharmacy 360 on stress and big emotions and the return to school. I'm just going to wait for Dr. Rebecca Quin to join me any moment now. And hopefully, I think this one's going to be good for really giving people practical tips for, it's so, sorry, get Rebecca in here. Very, very soon because it's only around the corner. No, any second now. Oh, here we go. Hello.
Hi there.
This is always the worst part, just
Yeah,
making sure the technology works.
exactly. And hoping I show up. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. And can you hear me,
Yes,
Liz?
I can.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Loud and clear.
great,
Um,
great.
yeah, so
Off to a good start then.
yeah. Yeah, well, look, I know you're just back off your holidays, so straight back into reality for you.
Yeah.
But I think with school just being around the corner, it's a great time to get you on board as part of Pharmacy 360. So thanks so much for joining us.
No, not at
Um,
all. My pleasure, Liz. And it will help me to get my thinking brain back in gear as well after a week off. So yeah,
Brilliant,
thanks
brilliant.
for having me.
Well, I think just we may as well get straight into it because I know we've such a huge topic to cover now. I know there's been loads of questions from people as well, so we'll try to get to those
Great.
as we go on. But I suppose to start, just if you could introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background in psychology and kind of the work you've done up to date.
Yeah, sure, no bother. So at the moment, I'm a principal clinical psychologist and I cover three teams in Wicklow. I'm working with children, adolescents, and their families for 15 years now. And 13 of those years have been with neurodivergent children, children with physical disabilities and intellectual disabilities. Prior to that, my experience was a bit more varied. I worked with adults in neuropsychology in King's College in London, the Moseley Hospital in London, then Beaumont Hospital, and then in more acute mental health, then in St. Patrick's Hospital. So quite a range of different experiences, really, but definitely found my passion working with children and their parents.
Brilliant.
So that's my
I mean,
background in a nutshell.
that's a lot of experience.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well done. And I think it's such you're a mom yourself,
Yeah,
I believe.
yeah, Gina, I nearly forgot that part. Probably more challenging than my actual job, I would say sometimes, is the reality of actually putting into practice what I preach with my own children. It's one thing being able to talk the talk, it's another being able to walk the walk when you have those kind of real visceral parent emotions yourself. So yes, I'm a mom of three, and my youngest is three. My middle child then is seven, and then I've a 9 year old as well. So it's a busy house at the minute, and I'm sure it is for many families when you've such a range of ages as well. And like mine are kind of pretty close together compared to maybe some other families where you have children going into secondary school and then you might have some still in primary school. And I think navigating those different needs and those different transition points for different age groups is such a challenge for parents.
Yeah, even the practicalities of different school pickups and different schools as well, and trying to keep your own
Yeah,
career going and your relationship going. Like there's a lot to juggle. So understandably,
absolutely.
the topic has fallen under the headline of stress.
Yeah,
And how to
yeah, yeah.
manage it and for people to hopefully get some help with all of that from us tonight. Um, so I suppose the first question is why is the return to school a challenging time for parents and their children? Like what kind of comes up most regularly that you see?
Yeah, quite a lot. It is one of the most difficult transition points, I think, in the year. And it's also like one of these, as I call it, parenting paradoxes, where there's a part of you that can't wait for a bit of you time again, maybe, depending on your role and your job. But also there's a part of you that dreads the return and all the practicalities and the mental load that comes with it. Um, but what I find is it's a transition point that has lots of different facets to it, really. And it kind of reminded me when I was thinking about it of your 360 approach that there's quite a number of different changes that happen from a physical, biological point of view, a social point of view, and a psychological point of view. So there's from a physical point of view, I suppose we have the change to their sleep, the change to their eating patterns during the day, a change to their physical activity levels during the day. And then as parents, that kind of our patterns in that regard change a bit as well. Then from a social point of view, you have kids going back into that social environment, maybe reigniting some challenges that existed in the previous year. Maybe they're meeting a new class for the first time or starting secondary school, meeting a new teacher, all the social challenges that go with that. And then not to mention the psychological piece, which I deal with the most, which is, I suppose, we see a lot of separation anxiety in younger and older children, and in parents can feel it as well. And we see, I suppose, just the stress levels in parents absolutely increase with the mental load, the increase in the practical demands, like you've mentioned, the different pickup times, the different start time, navigating childcare, the financial pressures that can come at this time of year. And when you take all of those changes together, you can understand why, the stress levels rise.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're probably the main reasons that I come across.
Yeah. And understandably so, as you said. And there, it seems to be at all ages. Like, do you see, any more, like, is it more difficult when it's kind of a child starting primary school or, compared to teenagers in secondary
Mhm.
school? Like, what would you commonly see? Or is it
Um,
just, it's so individualized what the person's going through at the time, I suppose?
yeah, I think you're right. Like, I think there are kind of well-known transition points that are definitely, they seem to come to the attention of professionals like myself a bit more. And that would be, yes, the traditional kind of first day of school, that starting point. But also a child that maybe has moved house and is starting a new school. And then we have the transition into secondary school, which can be very tricky for an adolescent, with the added impact of hormones and social changes and wanting to fit in and all that goes on during the adolescent years. So yeah, I think you're right. Like, we need to take it in context of the developmental stage that the child is at,
Yeah.
the cognitive ability that they have to take on board any strategies that might help. But yeah, typically parents will come to me for around the separation anxiety in primary school. That's probably the biggest thing that I see. It's the most kind of common anxiety as well.
And the separation anxiety, like, I suppose parents, you always want to try to keep your children safe. And there's so much that you have to control, and you try to hold onto all the reins and the strings, but
Yeah.
they really have to learn to let it go and trust the child is going to be safe in school. And that's so hard. And then when you take in all these changes, for example, a crazy morning routine, when you're trying to
Yeah.
get possibly multiple children to different places at different times and get yourself to work and have the lunches and think ahead with so much planning.
Yeah.
I spoke to somebody recently in the pharmacy, and they're reminiscing about their kids when they're going to school and how, like, the guilt they would feel if their child went to school and they were a little bit ratty with them, or there was a bit of an argument in the morning, or you're nagging them, and then all day long the parent was feeling so guilty, going, oh my gosh, like, that's a whole day they're just being so hard on themselves. And then they pick up their child, like, almost going, are they going to talk to me? And then the child, like, swans out, no bother, and the parent has been holding on to this all day, like. So
Yeah.
it's, yeah.
And I think you've touched on something there that comes up quite a lot in my work actually, and that is, I suppose, some of the false maybe or not so rational beliefs that parents have around separation and separation anxiety. So I would get parents that feel, or say, or, oh my God, am I traumatizing my child? Are they going to remember this forever? I feel like I'm abandoning my child, and these beliefs that they really impact the parent and how the parent feels. And we really have to work together to kind of, I suppose, break down how rational those beliefs are. But I think a parent is in a good place if they're aware of those beliefs in the first place. So I suppose that's where I'd always start with that to kind of test out, do you have evidence for that belief? Like, do you really believe that they will be traumatized for life. And, parents might ask me, oh, but will they always remember it? And I suppose I can't guarantee that they won't always remember an upsetting separation, but I always can guarantee that when they're older, they will look back on it through the eyes of a parent or an adult or with that adult lens,
Yeah.
and they'll be able to understand what happened,
Yeah, you get a
Uh,
different perspective, like when you zoom out and
yeah,
look back over time, for sure.
yeah, exactly.
So
But
what tips would you give for the that separation anxiety? Like, is
um,
there any
oh,
tricks you can share?
there's loads. And in fact, I do have, it's in my resource hub, which is in the link in my bio. There's a page of tips. And I've kind of divided them up into things you can do before the separation, during the separation, and then after the separation. So I'll try and touch on some of them. I suppose hugely important is preparation, both for the parent and for the child. Our nervous system loves to feel prepared and to have some idea of what's going to happen, and that then helps the nervous system to feel calmer when the event does happen.
Mhm.
So just simple things like practicing separation. Now, this would be maybe a younger child, but just practicing little mini separations with the child before they start school, and having a little separation ritual or routine that you use with your child where you say maybe the same thing every time, and trying to keep it kind of brief as well. So, mommy's going to work. I love you very much, and I'll see you after your lunch. So, giving them a concrete time in the day because they don't obviously understand or have a concept of time yet.
Mhm.
So, giving them a reference point for that can be very helpful. Talking them through what their day is going to look like using some visuals, maybe, or even bringing them along to visit the preschool or the school. Some preschools in particular do allow kind of a graded start where you can, start off for a couple of hours and then gradually increase it over time.
Mhm.
Um, so all of that preparation work definitely helps both the parent to feel more comfortable with it and also the child.
Yeah.
Um,
Or
and I
even
think,
for ourselves, sorry, like as
yeah,
adults, like any sort of visualization
yeah,
exercises, if you have something coming up that you're nervous about, it
mhm,
is so powerful
yeah,
to help just say prepare. But a friend of
yeah,
mine she's got a 2 and a 4-year-old, and I was just
mhm,
picking her brain earlier today, and she said that she's actually got some photographs of like the classroom, the door, the school, and it makes a little album. And she was even saying like, you could take photographs of, or even have a little diary of, say, a uniform, breakfast,
yeah,
for the morning routine, and tick things off as you go. And that visual, as you said, can be
yeah.
so helpful for the younger children to understand.
Yeah, because they're still very much in that concrete thinking phase and all these abstract ideas. They just don't remember them. And if they do, they've no kind of reference point. And sometimes their imagination is, maybe more frightening than the reality. So when they see pictures, it's often quite reassuring for them.
Yeah.
Because it's a tall order, like from an attachment point of view and from an evolutionary point of view, even to expect a child who has been, nurtured and cared for by their parent for like the last 3 to 4 years, whatever it might be, to suddenly, leave that parent for a lengthy period of time and be okay with it. It is a tall order.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Because
emotions that will come up for the child.
yeah,
That
yeah. I mean, I suppose when that separation happens and when they know it's going to be for a period of time, it does trigger that survival part of our brain, our amygdala, where our stress response, I suppose, is initiated at least anyway.
Mhm.
Um, and understandably so when you think of, as I mentioned, from an evolutionary point of view, it's our caregiver that keeps us safe, keeps us alive. So it does make sense that their brains would have that response. So just by repetition, then over time of that child seeing that the school or preschool is a safe place, the amygdala then learns to kind of calm down, and the stress response then gradually reduces over time. But all of that visualization work that you do with them beforehand can give the amygdala kind of a similar message, I suppose, and help them to become accustomed to the new environment that's possibly going to cause them anxiety. So,
Yeah. And
yeah.
I know from before you've done lots of work on this, but you talk about three big changes
Mhm.
for going back to school that you kind of they seem to be the regular pattern. Do you want to tell us a bit about those three changes?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think there's the three that probably have struck me the most, and that would be just from dealing with parents over the years. So the change to the morning routine, so the increase in the madness, really, certainly in my house anyway, in the mornings, and the rushed nature of that. The change to the sleep routine or the bedtime routine at nighttime, and then also a change to like screen time rules, really. Um, they're the three biggies that certainly come up in my house and in most other houses. And I think to do ourselves justice and our kids, I think it's a good idea to actually sit down and say this to your kids. Look, these are three changes that are going to be happening in the next couple of weeks. Now, you don't have to sit down and have a big, lecture with them or frighten them about it, but it's just more, again, preparing their nervous system for it. Because I think we get caught up, I can anyway, in the practical, buying the school bag, the uniform, the folders, the paying the bills, blah, blah, blah. And then I actually, take it for granted that my children realize that these big changes are happening, whereas they don't. Like, so that alone, even saying, look, bedtime, your brain just won't work, and explaining to them as well why these changes are happening, and explaining why it's in their best interest to kind of ride along with this as best they can.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so just explaining, well, bedtime is going to change because if your brain wants to work well in school and if you want to be able to chat to your friends, it's good to have more sleep, and um, explaining just I suppose, a bit about the biology of it, and even giving them some little bit of control maybe over the changes. So um, I often use one at home, like, oh, do you want, if they're battling with bedtime, the new time, I'm like, right, so do you want 10 minutes extra or 5 minutes extra? So you're still giving them a range that is acceptable to you, but you're giving them some element of control. Now, that will probably only work up to a certain age, but anyway, some bit of control over the boundaries that you're setting can be
And if they think
helpful.
they have a bit of a choice, that you still have your
Yeah,
boundaries, but yeah, they do feel like they're being heard, I suppose.
yeah,
'Cause that's
exactly.
what,
Yeah, and that's another really important point, Liz, actually, is to validate their response, like, and even anticipate it, saying, this isn't great, it sucks. I don't like rushing in the morning either. It's a pain, isn't it? So what can we do together to make it easier? So just being quite honest with them, and trying to get them, like, it's you and your child kind of against, or not against, but working to make the morning routine good rather than you against your
yeah,
child in the morning routine. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of trying to
teamwork
get them
rather
on routine.
yeah, like
Yeah.
teamwork rather than you against
Yeah.
them, and that you're the big
Yeah.
baddie saying, go to bed, like do this, do that. But actually, if they can
Yeah.
understand, and as you said, yeah, agree with them and say, like, I have to go to bed earlier when I go to work as well. So,
Yeah. And I
if
hate
you want to have a good day, like,
yeah.
I want to watch another episode of
Yeah.
whatever, but you can't.
Absolutely. And I find that really does, it certainly works with my kids when I'm honest with them like that. And I'll say things like, it's a pain. I just love the time to myself at night time, but I'm too tired in the morning. So I have to bring it back by 10 minutes for the next 3 nights. And then after that, I'll bring it back by 15 minutes. And I kind of talk them through how I've managed it. And then they see the rationale, and they don't see you as the big kind of bully coming in, destroying their bedtime
Yeah.
life.
And would
Yeah.
you recommend for people to like start this? Because what some schools are going back in a couple of days, and by next week, a lot of them are fully back then, aren't they? So
Yeah.
like would now be a good time to
Yeah.
start it?
Yeah, it might even be a little late, depending on, I mean, it'll depend on, first of all, I suppose, how much time you want to bring it back by. So in our house, for example, we've been away last week, and I mean, I need to change it back by about an hour and 15 minutes, like, if not longer. Um, so it depends on that. It depends on your own child's sleep needs. We have a mixture in my house of high sleep needs and not so high. And then your child's individual temperament and ability to kind of fall asleep, which varies obviously. But the rule of thumb, I suppose, is that you bring it back by 10 to 15 minutes to start off with. So for night one, two, and three, you'll have brought it back by 15 minutes, and you leave it at that for those 3 to 4 nights, maybe. And then on the fifth night, you bring it back by a further 10 to 15 minutes. So, and so on and so forth until you get to the required time. And that's such, as I said, a rule of thumb, it really depends on the child in question.
Yeah.
And then like neurodivergent children who have different maybe sleep needs, might find that even a bit trickier. So yeah, but that is a rule of thumb that I've used, and it does, by and large, usually works in
Yeah, yeah.
time.
Yeah, it's good not to do it too drastic. Like you're doing little bits at a
Yeah,
time, so it's more
exactly.
digestible for them and their body can adapt. Because it does take a week to 10 days to set up a new routine, doesn't it, for sleep? Like for our body
Yeah,
clock, the circadian rhythm to get into that,
yeah,
because you just fall into that 24-hour body clock. But it
yeah.
does take time and
Take time.
perseverance as well from
Yeah,
the parents'
yeah,
point of
yeah.
view too.
And just like the basics of sleep hygiene as well, we're aware is just, increasing activity maybe during the day if they're quite sedentary.
Yeah.
The fizzy drinks, the caffeine. I know my son, oh God, what was the name of the drink? One of these energy drinks anyway, and never again. Like I didn't realize it had caffeine in it actually, and he tried it out for
Monster, one of
him.
those.
No, no, sorry, I can't think.
Oh, don't worry. There's so many of
It's
them.
worth yeah, yeah, sorry. Um, but anyway, just those basics, I think, and the screen time and the blue light and all of that. Just to be mindful of that really as they start back to school. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a question here for you is what's the best way to create routines around homework and bedtime? Because in the evening time that,
Yeah.
when they come home,
Yeah.
any tips for how to manage
Yeah.
to get everything done but still get them to bed on time?
Yeah. Yeah. So my kind of mantra in terms of homework is do what works for you as a parent and a child, really. And I say that because I suppose there's so many factors that impact on homework routine. We need to consider a lot of things, really. So we need to consider, does your child have that after school restraint collapse? Are they exhausted after school? What's their ability to, what are their sensory needs like? Do they need to regulate or have some downtime when they come home after school? Their attention span and our expectations of how long they should sit and do their homework is important.
Hmm.
And the rule of thumb there would be it's kind of double the child's age plus 1 or 2 minutes. So, for example, with my 9-year-old, the average attention span really at that age would be 9 by 2, which is 18 plus 2 or 3 minutes, so around 20 minutes. Um, and even at that, children have individual needs around how they learn. So their learning style is important in terms of homework routines. So um, you might expect a child to maybe a 9-year-old, for example, to attend for maybe 20 minutes, but to be maybe moving or having some sensory input during those 20 minutes. So, for example, I know myself when I sit down to do an essay or whatever it might be, I have to have something on my lap, like just some deep pressure on my lap, and that will actually help me to attend for longer. Other people have to cross their legs or move a lot. Like my
Okay.
son, for example, will walk around the counter when he's learning his spelling. So just trying to introduce maybe a bit of fun into the homework routine can really be helpful. I think we get so serious around it.
Yeah.
And understandably though, because you've just finished a long day at work and now you have to face into this potential homework battle. So it can be hard to switch on fun mode.
Yeah.
And if there's a parent that's maybe better than that at that than another, then maybe they could do the homework with the child. But I know this, sorry, I've said a lot there, but there's just so many factors to consider when you're creating a homework routine.
Yeah.
Um, and doing what works well, I think, for you and your child. It might look different for one child versus another. I know my son, for example, gets all his homework done on a Monday, and then he might revisit it then that's the way they just do it in his school, on a Thursday, for example, before the spelling test. Whereas my daughter, she's more consistent and needs her downtime after school and will only go for like 20 minutes or whatever. So
Mhm.
just really finding what works based on your child's temperament, attention needs, sensory needs, and learning
Yeah.
style. Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned there when kids come home from school,
Yeah.
like regulating their nervous system. So I
Yeah.
suppose when you think about it, like they've been in a
Mhm.
noisy classroom and maybe loads of activity going on, and they'll either go one way or the other. They'll either be so stimulated, like overstimulated
Yeah.
and hyper, or else they'll crash. And I know you've said this before, but also when they get home into their safe environment, sometimes they can
Yeah.
kind of let off steam that they've been bottling up all day
Yeah.
from whatever might have happened. So, have you any tips on with regards to that and regulating their nervous system? Like, would you recommend doing the same thing each day, like creating a ritual sort of thing to transition them?
Yeah. Yeah, again, depending on the child's, on the triggers that are causing the escalation or the changes to their nervous system during the day, you might need to address even some of the issues in school. So even before they come home to try and manage it a bit better.
Mm.
So for example, many children have sensory needs around noises, smells, or touch maybe at school. So trying to see is that going on for your child and trying to address it at school if it is. But when they come home, having a transition ritual. So something that they do maybe every day as they transition from the school gate to the house at home. It might be, and again, this will vary for each child. So as a parent, we tend to kind of bamboozle them sometimes with questions and attention, whereas really a lot of kids just need nothing. They want a low arousal, no talking, no nothing zone during that transition period. And
Yeah,
that's fine. It's not that they're disengaging or they're ignoring you, or that's just their nervous system getting rid of the stress from the various demands of the day.
yeah,
Um, Other kids might benefit from listening to kind of some soft music in the car, from a fidget toy. It might be, again, for some children, a screen might be helpful where they can just kind of lose themselves for a few minutes before they transition to home. And then typically, yeah, it is a good idea to have a routine that works. Often kids are starving, like
yeah,
that's, having those basic needs met.
yeah.
We often forget about the obvious,
Hungry.
they, yeah, exactly, hungry or absolutely gasping because they have spent so much time playing that they haven't had time to have their
Yeah,
drink or even their lunch sometimes. So thinking of the basics first,
yeah,
and then again, maybe creating a low arousal space in the house where they can go and decompress for a while.
mhm,
Um, and getting them to articulate that as well. So using the phrase with them. So, oh, I think you might need some downtime. Do you need time alone or whatever? So that eventually over time they'll start to say, oh no, mom, I need my downtime, and they'll be able to recognize the cues within themselves to take themselves aside and kind of regulate again
yeah.
after
We
school.
realize then how they feel afterwards as
Yeah.
well, the kind of before and after. And yeah, it is about that routine, isn't it? And then
Yeah.
you can face into the homework then afterwards once they've kind of
Yeah.
had their the time and allow them that.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And, something else just came to mind there around the homework routine. Again, it depends on the child. But if you're just giving them the choice, like, would you like to start with your favorite subject or the really hard one or whatever? So,
Mm.
um, getting their buy-in, I suppose, because some kids like to get the hard stuff out of the way first, others want to get the easy stuff done first, whatever. So,
Yeah.
then an element of choice is helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. I actually didn't think of that one. Yeah, it makes so much sense though, doesn't it? And again, they feel like they have an input and they're being
Yeah.
heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
so we talked about children's nervous system and regulating that. What about parents?
Yeah.
What would your advice
Yeah.
be? Because obviously, if a parent is stressed and anxious coming up to this time, which obviously, like we know, we've already spoken about all the things that will contribute to that. But if a parent's nervous system is like a little bit wired and they're in that fight or flight, high stress, high cortisol, high adrenaline, hyper mode, that
Yeah.
will knock on to the children as well. So I
Yeah.
suppose it's your own oxygen mask first.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for parents with regards to
Yeah.
that?
I think first and foremost is just becoming aware of it and knowing that you're in that state. And I think you described it really well there, like you're kind of in fight or flight. So obviously then your amygdala or your emotion brain is more susceptible to being triggered by your kids and by all the stresses. So just being aware of that. And then getting to know, I suppose, what I always say that when we're easily triggered, or when I become kind of very reactive as a parent, it's always a sign to me that one of my needs isn't been met somewhere along the
Mhm.
line. And to, take your 360 approach again and have a look at, like, are these the social needs, physical needs, um, or psychological needs that aren't being met, and trying to address them.
Mhm.
So oftentimes with parents, it's actually, I find in the work that I do anyway, oftentimes it is a, a basic needs really that are going kind of, I wouldn't say fully unmet, but partially met maybe.
Mhm.
So their own sleep hygiene, their own maybe fitness levels, or their own lifestyle maybe needs some adjusting to
Mhm.
help their nervous system to reset itself. Job stress can play a big role. So often around this time of year, I
Yeah,
often suggest to
financial
parents
stress
to have a,
as well.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, and there's, I mean, there's a whole list of different self-care areas that there's probably eight or nine, I think, pillars of self-care as they're called. And I could share them maybe in my stories later, but having a look at each of those and seeing, God, actually it's friendships. That's where I'm really letting myself down. I haven't met up with a pal properly. I haven't had a proper heart to heart with it, someone that understands
Mhm.
me, and I'm bottling it all up. If you're that type of person that needs to offload to pals every now and
Yeah.
then, um, sometimes just doing a quick self-care kind of checklist can be really helpful in terms of identifying why your nervous system is out of kilter.
Yeah.
Um, so
Like
yeah, I
things like
mean,
the preparation we spoke about earlier as well.
mm, yeah,
You're thinking about the kids, but what do you need yourself?
mm,
And you're getting the kids to bed earlier. Maybe you need to go to bed earlier as well. And I know it's
yeah,
that balance of like parents love that time when the children go to bed and the house calms down and
mm,
they can just have that a little bit of peace potentially if they're lucky.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and but to allow them themselves something that they enjoy before
yeah,
straight away going to prepare the school lunches for tomorrow and the dinners for the next day, like unless you fit in the things you enjoy as well, like your own health and enjoyment will suffer.
yeah, yeah. And it always brings to mind, there's a title of a book by a psychologist, and it's called Love In, Love Out. And basically, it always comes back into my mind. Like, it's such a simple way of remembering, I suppose, that we can't give out what we're not putting into ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen it time and time again in myself and in other parents that, you struggle, and I'm more reactive if I'm not giving to myself.
Yeah.
And you think you're fine, you kind of trundle along and you're like, no, this is grand, but then suddenly you notice a shift in your nervous system
Mm-hmm.
and how reactive you are. And I think then that's the time you need to readjust
Yeah.
things. But
That's if you
just
react to the kid or
yeah,
snap at them and
yeah,
guilt that
yeah,
follows then
yeah,
afterwards, and you beat yourself up and you're hard on
mm,
yourself. So like to kind of rewind, I know even I don't have kids, but I know in busy days in the pharmacy when I'm more reactive, I probably have had a very rushed morning.
yeah,
And I know this is so much harder for people when they have kids in the house and they're trying to organize everything. But by setting your own alarm to get up earlier, and again,
yeah,
you'll have to go to bed a bit earlier to do
yeah,
this. So it's going to take a bit of preparation and planning, but to try to get up yourself a bit earlier and start your own day right,
yeah,
whether it's a 3 minute stretch or
yeah,
like a breathing
yeah,
exercise or meditation or whatever works for you, or like having
mm,
time to have your shower and put your makeup on and make your own coffee,
yeah,
whatever works for you, or
yeah.
your maybe I shouldn't say coffee straight away because that might fuel the fire. Maybe a lemon and ginger.
Oh no,
But
I can't
a
do that.
morning
So
routine, I think a morning routine is so important
yeah,
for the parents as well. So when they're
yeah,
thinking about going back to school, planning the children,
yeah,
everything that needs to be done, just pull back,
yeah,
like zoom out a little bit and have a look at themselves. Have you had your breakfast? Are you fueled for the day? Have
yeah,
you had any time out? Or like set your own nervous system straight before you can like
yeah,
ask your child to be all calm and
yeah.
organized.
No, exactly. And it's a game changer. And just speaking from my own personal experience, I'm one of those parents that wants to stay up late and get time back to myself and enjoy the calm of night. But it was causing chaos with my morning because I was getting up and I was, cranky the following morning and rushing around. So I had to change, like, and I really had to work on it, on going to bed earlier and getting up and getting to the gym. That's my nervous system reset in the morning. I know it's not for everyone, and everyone, each their own. I'm sure there's something for everyone out
Yeah.
there, but that because mornings in our house are chaos. There's one of my kids has quite significant sensory issues with stressing, so it can go from 0 to 100 quite quickly. So I really, of all times in the day where I need my nervous system to be as even as possible, it's the morning. So yeah, I just changed around my routine, went to bed earlier, got up, got some bit of exercise, and definitely, and then even on my way home from the gym, I'd be mentally rehearsing if I get really triggered by this sensory stuff, how am I going to respond? And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a deep breath, and I'm going to pause before I respond. So those little simple strategies of pausing as much as you can throughout the day to check in with yourself
Yeah.
and setting your intention as well on how if you're the type of person that is quite reactive with your kids or maybe tends to shout, um, setting your intention and maybe even writing it down regularly. When my kid really triggers me or when I feel triggered, I am going to respond by whatever it might be the alternative response is.
Mhm.
And just setting that intention, I think, at the start of the day, um, I suppose it tells our subconscious or our brain, there's a certain part of our brain that it activates, and we're more likely then to engage in that response later in the day. So that intention setting, I think, is quite important
Yeah.
if you're trying to change how you respond to your children during this stressful time of year.
Yeah.
Uh,
Really good. It's like visualization again and
but
preparation. But I think
yeah,
it's also important to note that when people are, if it doesn't go to plan and you do react and you say something in a tone
yeah,
you didn't mean, or just to forgive
yeah,
yourself and be gentle on yourself, because in that moment you're doing your best. And I
yeah,
think
yeah.
I think women are probably worse about this than men, about holding on and beating
Yeah.
yourselves up about things afterwards. Like, just
Mm.
allow yourself to let it go, and maybe
Yeah.
resetting yourself. And if you have whatever works for you, like whether it's exercise or dancing or shaking it off, or like letting out a roar in the car, maybe if you're on your own, like whatever it is to kind of regulate
Yeah.
yourself, cold shower, to just reset it and be like, okay, let's start fresh.
Yeah.
That's gone, it's in the
Yeah.
past. Move forward, and not beat yourself up for ages.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought it up because this is something that so many parents struggle with. But I can tell you, if you're listening into this live now, you're already trying really hard, you know what I mean? And you want the best for your child.
Yeah.
And you will not do the best, whatever that might be. There is no perfect, there is no getting it right all the time.
No.
And I think you need to acknowledge that and you need to repair with yourself first and then repair with your child. And hands up, I lose it. I become reactive with my kids at times. And I do my best to use it as an emotion regulation lesson almost for my kids. And, later on when I've calmed down, I will go back and say, I'm really sorry I did that. My emotion brain just got the better of me that
Yeah.
time. And, what are some other things I could have done? And at this point now, my 3, 4, nearly 4 year old is telling me, take a deep breath,
Yeah.
Sally. But I think just owning it and showing that you're human and
Mhm.
that everyone's emotion brain can get the better of them or hijack them at
Of
times.
course.
And like, yeah, it can be a really powerful reframe rather than allowing the guilt of it to consume you. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Like,
that's my go
learn
to
from
my
failure.
next up.
Then, yeah, don't beat yourself up. Everyone's trying their best, and there is no
Yeah,
perfect, as you said.
yeah,
I'm so
yeah.
conscious of time because we're almost at 40 minutes already. We
Okay.
did get some questions in. I won't
Yeah,
do too many. I won't get to all of them, unfortunately. But
yeah.
I know we want to speak about resources because you have some incredible resources on your page.
Yeah,
And then maybe if you want to mention the resources, and then we can jump to some of the questions and see how we go.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's fine. So one I definitely want, I know there's been a few questions about screen time and managing that, and I think webwise.ie is a good website with some good advice around screen time. but also I've shared it in my stories earlier today. So a fabulous psychologist, Dr. Kimberly Bennett, over in the UK, very kindly is sharing a free resource that she created. It's the Confidence Building Journal, and it's aimed really at younger children, or yeah, and school starters. And it's a journal of 56 pages of different activities and resources that you and your child can do together to prepare them for school. And it touches on friendships, separation anxiety. It touches on bedwetting as well. There's just a vast amount of very useful nuggets in that resource. Um, there's also a few questions I know came in around children that really struggle to attend school, or school refusal. I don't like that term, school refusal, because often they just genuinely are unable to attend for various reasons. But there's a Wicklow school refusal pack, and I will share that again. Actually, I think it's probably in the link in my bio. You can access it that way. But again, an amazing resource with a checklist of things that parents can go through and check that they've done or not done whatever, if their child is finding it difficult to go to school. And it's targeted more probably at the older age range, so teens and older children.
Okay.
So yeah, that's another fantastic resource to check out.
Yeah, and if anybody just clicks the link in your bio on your page, like I've had a look at it, I've actually used it for a few customers already, recommended them towards it, because you have it really well structured, and when you click, you'll, like, if there's a topic that you're interested in, it'll jump out at you very, very clearly. And then you have like documents you can print off, and they're very, very simple and practical. So I recommend people to definitely take a look at that. But you mentioned screens, and it's like it's a huge issue at the moment, and it's probably worthy of its own interview, its own live. But one of the questions that did come in was, do you have any advice for limiting my child's screen time on phones and tablets without causing tantrums?
Okay. So, yeah.
It's a big
I don't.
one.
I think it's probably unrealistic to expect, a compliant child that's suddenly going to comply with new boundaries, especially if they've had a free reign of the screen over the summer. So I think a lot of setting boundaries for parents is becoming comfortable with their discomfort, and knowing that their discomfort and that their tantrum is actually, a normal, developmentally appropriate expression of dissatisfaction with this new rule. But there are things that can help. So again, giving them some element of control. So talking to them about why you're implementing these new boundaries as well. I think that's a really important discussion, actually. And normalizing to them that, this isn't your fault, actually, that you find the screen addictive. These screens are designed to be addictive. They trigger off this chemical in your brain that makes you want more. And there's all these flashy images, and explaining to them all the reasons why phones and screens are addictive. And that, again, getting on the same team as your child, and we're going to work together to try and just reduce the time on the screen, because we've noticed that, like, if you're on it for too long, it causes kind of angry behavior. And I know you don't like when you're like that, because oftentimes the kid doesn't, and they're taken aback almost by their behavior post screen time. So negotiating with them around the boundary, it can be helpful as well. But also, I suppose, just being consistent with it. I think that over time reduces the backlash that you can get. I think I've noticed myself as a parent, if I'm inconsistent in the boundary that I set, I just confuse my child, and then the backlash is even more. So whatever boundary you set, make sure it's realistic. You get some bit of input from them, a bit of control maybe on their part, but then to be as consistent as you can with it. But to expect some backlash, because that's just normal, and have in your mind how you're going to respond to it, or even preempt it with them. So, this is the new boundary. I know you're not going to like it. You might even have a tantrum around it, and I'll help you through with that big feeling, but this is the new rule and sticking with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so easy for me to say here.
Look, and these things
Free.
are always easier said than done,
Yeah,
but like it's great to have advice around it. And
yeah,
like obviously every person is different. And I know like with teenagers when they get their own smartphones,
mhm,
then that's like another big area.
mm,
A lot of parents are very worried about the safety of their children online and who they're interacting with, and like cyberbullying and all that
yeah,
sort of stuff that's going on, and even the Snapchat, the way kids are interacting with each other
mhm,
all through a screen, not like a one-to-one conversation.
mhm.
So any tips around that, or have you seen like worked with many teenagers struggling with that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I only read something today, actually. Cannot remember the source, sorry. But it was basically teenagers were surveyed, and they said it was asking them, would they the outcome of it was that they would be willing to pay money to help them reduce their time on certain social media. Yeah. So they don't want to be on it oftentimes as much as they are.
Yeah,
And a lot of them are actually looking for help in reducing their time on it when they're honest about it.
yeah,
I do have a post actually, because like you say, it is a big topic, and I could go on for another half an hour about it. But I do
yeah,
have a post on my page that covers the findings of a 2024 study that covered 10,000 teenagers and families. It was done in the US, the International Journal of Pediatrics, I think it was. But anyway, it looks at the strategies that have actually been shown to be effective in reducing a teenager's screen time. So I would highly recommend having a look at that. And I'll share the post if I remember all these things now I have to share
yeah,
in my stories after we get off this live. But because I think a lot of parents are just kind of, dancing in the dark sometimes, and they're like, oh, will I try this? If I limit their screen time at dinner time, does that actually work? Or will I stop them from having it in their room? Or, but whereas this study actually gives the evidence of what did work with these 10,000 families. So it's a big sample size. It's pretty decent,
yeah,
pretty representative sample as well. So do have a look at that. I found it helpful anyway.
yeah.
So, and again, web-wise, and there's so many websites out there that do give parents guidelines on how best to manage it.
Yeah, yeah. No, it is, and it's very worrying. And even the peer pressure, kids feeling like they might be left out if they don't have
Yeah.
WhatsApp, for example.
Mm,
But I'm such a easy for me to say, but I'm like, bring back the 3210 and Snake, and just being able to speak to one person at a time.
yeah,
Because it's so
I
overwhelming.
know. Yeah,
Adults hate being in groups with like I know that's another thing, the WhatsApp parents group can,
yeah,
like anyone I've spoken to, customers coming in, they hate it. They
yeah,
mute it. They're like, oh no, the group's gone off again. Like,
yeah.
and it drives everyone mad. But imagine if you were a teenager and you've
I
got a
know.
group for your English class, your music class, your football
Mm,
class, your hockey team.
mm.
Like it's too much
No,
stimulation, and it's not like
yeah,
one-on-one genuine conversations.
conversation, yeah. No, certainly, and it's certainly affecting children's, or especially teenagers' attention. And there's this phenomenon, I suppose, called attention fragmentation now, where like studies have shown that the capacity to pay attention for long periods of time is reducing due to our smartphone kind of habit.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, I mean, there, if you want a good guy to follow on this topic, actually, is Jonathan. I'm never sure how to pronounce
I
his
know.
second name. I think it's Haidt or Haidt. Yeah, he talks a lot, I suppose, about managing phones, and how we need to do it really at a national level. How
Yeah,
there needs to be national movement towards this,
yeah,
in order to regulate it, in order to shift kind of social
yeah,
norms. So
yeah,
it's probably much bigger than our discussion here, but it's like any commodity, I suppose. Like alcohol, drugs, well, maybe not drugs, but alcohol. We can enjoy it when we use it in moderation and
mhm,
safely. But it's to kind of prevent us using it in excess is the thing, and it's the same kind of with social media. There are certainly benefits to it, but there are certainly the downsides, and we just need to learn how to navigate it or use it appropriately, really.
Yeah, that doctor,
Um,
there's a great,
yeah,
he's interviewed by Dr. Rangan Chatterjee on the Feel Better, Live More
yeah,
podcast on Spotify or wherever you get your
yeah,
podcasts. And really good. I'll try to share that one actually after if anyone wants to listen to it. It was mind blowing. And even they talk about what age kids
yeah,
should
yeah,
or shouldn't get a smartphone and how it affects their development and their
yeah,
social skills. And it's absolutely mind blowing. And it does
yeah,
these changes, it takes a village, as they say. It's,
yeah,
it's difficult when
yeah.
you're one parent trying to overcome this, but I suppose it's about parents coming together, opening the conversation
Yeah,
and trying to do it in groups.
yeah. And don't be afraid to be that parent. Like I've seen it in our own school. Parents have come forward on WhatsApp groups and said, look, I really feel strongly about phones and would you all mind like signing this kind of petition or whatever to put to the school that we hold off on giving children phones until
Yeah,
secondary school.
yeah,
And certainly there's a big movement in Greystones and Wicklow in particular. I know St. Patrick's National School there kind of piloted it, and it was very successful in terms of children not using phones in school until they moved to secondary. So, and I think if that's in line with what Jonathan is saying as well, is that this needs to be a socio-cultural
yeah,
kind of a
yeah.
norm that we establish. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
I
it's
know a customer
but
was in recently, and their child was at the Gaeltacht there over the
yeah,
summer, and they weren't allowed their phones. I think they were maybe allowed them on a Friday for an hour to make calls to their family, something like
mm,
that. And when the child came back, they were like, "I didn't miss it. It was actually so nice. We all
mm,
spoke to each other, and like people actually listened to you, and they weren't looking at the screen." And
mm,
the child was amazed at this and going like, I actually don't like, they didn't miss it and they didn't want to go back to it.
yeah.
So that was like, if they have the choice, but when you're brought up in a certain way, and it's that whole myth of normal, just because it's
Yeah,
common,
I
doesn't make
know.
it
And
right. Yeah.
yeah. So it
But
is, it's about changing those norms. But anyway, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, look,
Hope
there's
for
so
life.
much more I could ask
Yeah.
you, and it's been an absolute pleasure. You've been like just such a wealth of knowledge. And I suppose I will say to people, like, follow your page on Instagram, have a look at the resources you have up through the link in your bio. And if there's any questions people have related to like pharmaceutical side of stuff, the pharmacy side of things, feel free to message myself or send it to Mars Pharmacy either. And I'm sure you're the same. Like if people send a message,
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
there's
I
any,
do. I at times I find it really hard to get back to all my DMs, but I do make an effort to try to get back to people. So if I have missed a question that came in, do get back to me in my DMs, and I'll do my best to get back to
and
you.
you cover
But
so much on your page as well. So I'd encourage people to actually just scroll down through your posts, and you'll find a topic that probably will jump out at you if it's something you're interested in.
yeah,
So maybe have a
yeah,
look at that before sending too many messages in,
yeah,
because you need to
yeah,
scroll around as well.
yeah,
So
yeah.
but
Thank
yeah,
you,
thank you so
Liz.
so much. And yeah,
Yeah,
all the resources are there, so people
yeah.
go and explore.
Okay. Thanks so much for having me. And please do keep going with your initiative around the 360 as well, 360 approach. I am such a fan of that holistic approach
Yeah.
to health. So thank you for that and thanks for
Oh,
having me.
thank you. Well,
Okay,
next week there's more lives. I know Una's doing a few with Jerry Hussey will be back on, and also
brilliant.
Dr. Daniel Jones about supplements that can help with managing stress. So if anyone's interested in those,
Oh,
tune into my
brilliant.
page. And yeah, there's lots more to come, and then we'll be moving on to nutrition afterwards. So yeah, it'll keep going for sure. All right.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks
you
so
so
much,
much,
Liz.
and thanks for
Okay.
everyone joining. Okay.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.
Bye.